Hi, good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here. Thanks to Thai Coimbatore, Dr. Selvakumar, Forge, Vish, Kiran for having us over. I was trying to figure out if I can get Anand in as well, who's my partner at Sylvant. Unfortunately, he's out on travel today and could not make it. For us, this is the ideal kind of platform that that should happen almost every month in every city in the country. Because as you said, I truly believe that the future of our country rests on getting our education systems right. And if not, I think we are kind of gambling away the future that we are all striving hard for. And therefore, at the drop of a hat, I think when I got the mail from Vishwanath saying, hey, we're doing this, I think within a few minutes I'd said, we're on. Whatever help we need from us, we are happy to be here. So Gaurav has been here from Team Sylvant as well the last couple of days. Having gone through the agenda, I think you've done a phenomenal kind of packing of insights over the last 2 days, and see a lot of friends from the entrepreneurial world, from the education world. All of you guys have been exposed to some of the really good thinking that needs to go in this space. So I was trying to ask Gaurav, so what's new? And he said, hey, I think whatever needs to be said has been said. So you might as well go out there and say, I endorse everything that what everybody else has said, and get out. You'll have done a good job, right? So what I wanted to do was just amplify 3 or 4 things from my experience and from what we're seeing in the marketplace. I want to keep it short, but keep it more interactive. I know there are a bunch of questions. I've also met a whole lot of entrepreneurs whom we've been working with the last 2-3 years. It's also wonderful to see progress along the path. So I just want to amplify rather 3 or 4 key points and then keep it open for a conversation. Is that fine? Great. So the first thing that I want to start off with is that this is a beautiful quote that I had heard on education. Probably one of the best definitions of education as far as I've heard from really defining what education to be, and it's very simple. It goes as this. It says that education is nothing but a motivated learner, an inspired teacher, and a tree, right? And a tree is a metaphor for all the technology, the whiteboards, blackboards, content, apps, games, everything that you can get. But the critical part is the tree is only functional if there is a motivated learner and an inspired teacher. Otherwise, the tree has no part to play in the learning process, right? Many times I feel that we as entrepreneurs, and especially given the fact that we tend to use the word edtech more, and I like that we're calling it the Education Entrepreneurship Summit and not necessarily the EdTech Entrepreneurship Summit, is a critical difference, because as entrepreneurs we somehow get so enamored and so in love with the tree that we forget that the objective of the tree is to motivate the learner or to inspire the teacher, right? So therefore, as entrepreneurs who are building products and building solutions, I think the thought has to be very, very clear that what is this tree of mine going to do to motivate the learner or inspire the teacher? If it is not doing either, right, then I would argue that there's no need for the tree. So the question that I want to leave with you guys is, please look hard at the tree and answer this question, which brings me to the second question. When we've done Start EDU, the last 2 editions, I think more than about 350 odd entrepreneurs across the country, all of my conversations starts off with the question saying, you know, and you know how this things, right? And I do that when I'm showing my product. You enter a room with an entrepreneur, okay, let me show you my product. And here is what my product is, look at the features, look at the benefits. I say, hey, first 10 minutes, keep your product aside. I don't even want to set sight on your product. Don't even tell me about what your product can do. Answer this question, what problem are you trying to solve and for whom? Right? 101 of Kotler, it says that when a customer comes in looking for a drill bit, he is not looking for a drill bit, he is looking for a hole. Right? Again, as entrepreneurs, we forget that. Right? Of course, the product may be good, of course, the product may be solving, but let's start with the customer first. Right? We've had extreme cases. In fact, We had an interesting conversation in one of the Start EDU boot camps. And last year I told one guy, saying, how many customers had you met? He said, maybe 2, 3, but why should I meet customers? I'll go meet them after I built my product. So my advice to him is, stop spending even a paisa from this minute onwards on your product. Drop everything that you're doing. In the next 1 year, just go meet 100 customers, right? And don't even pitch. Ask them what is the problem that you're facing and what do you think is the possible solution. The guy came back to this Start EDU and said, 3 months I just went and met the customers. I realized my product had no bearing. I stripped down everything. I just took one part which made sense and now I'm building it. Right? So go talk to your customers, find out what problem are you solving for whom. And for whom is very critical. Education, and I've repeated this often, but it's worth repeating, is that it's probably the only sector where the 5 players or the 5 roles that usually is played are probably 5 different people. So your consumer, customer, the influencer, and the user and the beneficiary are 5 different people, right? So I'm just to give you an example of somebody who's selling a teacher training solution to a school, right? The customer is somebody who pays the check, very clear. Who is signing on your check is the customer, right? In this case, the consumer is the school. The school principal says, I'm going to use this product. The user is the teacher. The beneficiary is the kid. Right? And the influencer can be the government. So if you look at this model of a problem that you're trying to solve, the customer's problem of, in this case, the customer can be a CSR entity, right? Who says, go implement this in government schools and I will get you the money in, right? Now you could as well reconfigure this whole thing with the customer being the school, which means when you go to a private school, the school is cutting the check out. So the question to be answered clearly is, who's your customer and what does the ecosystem of these players around this customer look like? Because if that definition of your customer is not clear, then there's nobody to pay for the solution. Or you will get your first 10, 20 customers and then you struggle to find the 21st one. Right? Which brings me to the other point of saying, so conversation that you had is, but how do I decide who my customer is? Because potentially the government can be your customer, the school can be your customer, the parent can be your customer, right? The teacher can be your customer. Who is my customer? And the answer to that question lies in asking, for whom is the problem big and urgent? Again, one-on-one marketing, that a sale is not a sale until and unless you're selling it to somebody for whom the problem is big and urgent. It is not big or urgent. I'm sure as entrepreneurs we've seen, when you come out of a sales meeting saying, boss, I floored the guy with my product and the guy said this is so critical, required, but you chase him for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, the sale is not happening because you realize, well, the problem looks big. In the consumer's mind, in the customer's mind, the problem is not urgent, right? So how do you make the problem urgent? Just as an example, we struggled with this for Meritrack for almost 3 years, trying to sell assessment as a service. We knew the problem was big. Thousands of companies being born every year, 100,000s of kids being hired every year. How do you get an assessment tool? Every HR head I went and spoke to said, "Badhiya solution hai, I like it. But you know what? Let's talk about it 6 months later. Let's talk about it 9 months. I'm managing, I don't need you." I think 2004 we came out with this report along with, we released it alongside NASSCOM, saying we put the fear of the cost of a bad recruit. We said, listen, you're hiring people. If you hired the wrong guy, what does the cost of a bad recruit look like? And through a variety of calculations, assumptions, we had put the cost of a bad recruit at 3 lakh rupees. We said, you hire the guy, you train him for 3 months, salaries for 6 months. By the time you realize the guy is bad, 6 months are over. If you take all these costs, then you have to find a replacement. It is 3 lakh rupees. And we managed to get this report in the hands of the CEOs of these large companies. And suddenly the HR head started feeling the heat, because the CEO started asking the question, how sure are you that you're hiring the right guy? Because the cost of a bad recruit is 3 lakhs and I don't want to be losing money. So it moved from just being big to big and urgent, because our point was every day that you're doing a wrong recruitment process, you're losing 3 lakhs for every hire that you possibly are getting wrong, right? So the moment you started putting that seed in their minds, we started getting calls back saying, when can you start implementing the solution? This is just one example of trying to make it urgent. So as entrepreneurs, all of us have to be sure that we're running after a big problem. The question is it urgent? Or the other question to ask is, if it is not urgent, how do you make it urgent? Right? How do you make sure that in the customer's mind, you're able to show that this problem needs my attention today, right? And if you don't do that, we hear the same stories, right? I've talked to 300 schools, I've got 20 schools in place, I'm still struggling to get an appointment, all that issue starts coming into play, right? Which brings me to the fourth point, that if you are saying that the problem is big and urgent, your solution has to solve that problem. What is the difference between a solution and a product? Any ideas? Is it the same? Is a product what is the difference between a product and a solution? Perfect, okay. Any other differences? That Correct. So as entrepreneurs, product is a tool that can be used to find a solution. As entrepreneurs, many times we keep thinking only product. You got to shift that mindset to a solution, because till the product doesn't solve the problem, the customer has not got the solution. I'll give you an example, a very simple example, right? If I'm a training company and my product is skills training, right? What else can the solution be? What other elements should come in the solution? If my student, if the student is my customer and I'm offering whatever, right? English training, skills training, whatever training is my product. What other elements should be there in the solution? The example here is that, can you tie up with a bank to provide educational loans to the student so that he is able to afford your training program? Because if you don't conceive that as a solution, and I'm giving a very simplistic one here, that you don't have a solution, the student will come and say, I like your product, but I don't have the money to buy it. Your sale is not done, right? So think solutions, not products. And solutions have to very visibly, very, very clearly solve the problem, right? Again, just looking at Sonia here, who's obviously the design guru and the design thinking angle from that sense. She's going to talk a lot about how do you design a solution itself, right? So that's the fourth. And the last one that I want to make is that when you start creating solutions and not products, that is when you start looking at collaborators, right? One of the issues that I have with the Indian entrepreneurs, not actually entrepreneurs and not necessarily education, is that we are not actively and proactively thinking collaborations, right? One of the questions I want to ask is, all of you guys been in the last 3 days, one question that you need to go back to is, how many collaborations did I stitch? How many other entrepreneurs am I going to work with, right? And I would put a target for each one of you to say, go back with at least 2 other entrepreneurs that you can collaborate with in any other form. I think if we don't collaborate with each other in this community, and if we don't build ecosystems, collaborative ecosystems, we are not going to solve the problem, right? I mean, we've heard enough and more reports on saying how large the Indian education market is, how large the opportunity is. There is no issue with the pie. We need to figure out how to splice and dice the pie so that everybody benefits, right? So please think very actively about collaborations to build a solution framework, rather than saying, I'm going to build it on my own. If I share it to somebody, I'll lose it, right? And I with whatever the various plans you built, I think an idea is only not even worth the paper it's written on in a way, till that idea moves into execution, and execution starts solving problems. Right? You look at all this and you wonder, there's so much to be done, where do I start? And I always get inspired by this quote by St. Francis of Assisi, which says that you start by doing what's necessary, then you're doing what's possible, and then you're suddenly doing the impossible. So the question as entrepreneurs is what is necessary to be done, right? Which ensures that you got your problem, solution, collaboration, everything in place. And then you start moving that into the realm of possibilities. And I'm saying the magic will start happening, right? So I just wanted to string these 5 things together and share with you that just make it your mantra. That every day you wake up, you start looking at whatever the mantras are in your own terms to say, am I really looking at education, not at tech? Am I solving the right problem for the right customer for whom it's big and urgent? Is my solution right? Whom am I collaborating with? And what do I need to do today that is necessary? And you just need to just stick through it, right? It's hard. Education, I used to start off my board meetings in Meritrack saying, Bhagwan ke ghar mein der hai, andher nahi. Because I used to argue with my board that I always meet numbers except that it is 4 quarters late, right? Because you always underestimate the time, effort, money, perseverance required to crack something in the education space, in the learning space, and it takes time. So if you're thinking something will get done in 3 months and it costs you 10 lakhs, it's going to take 6 months and you should budget for 20 months, right? And with that planning, then you will start to stick around for longer, right? It's really heartening to see a lot of my friends here who've been through various pivots, 3-4 years they've been at it. Something's working, not working. How do I morph it? How do I change it? How do I find that elusive pain point that I can solve so clearly that nobody else will question me again? It's going to take time, but I'm glad, and I see no other way than all of us need to stick together to make this happen. So again, from a Sylvan standpoint, happy to be of support to anybody in this ecosystem to help connect the dots and to help build any form of collaborative networks that will be beneficial to all. Happy to take questions, thoughts. I think we have another 5-10 minutes to. Yes, sir.
Because I don't see much of. So, Meritrack is the forerunner in assessment space, and we are also into the assessment space. But we don't see much of news about Meritrack.
Yeah, it's been about 5 years since I moved out of Meritrack. Meritrack continues as an independent brand under Manipal.
Okay.
Fairly large enterprise, but I think the focus has shifted to a lot of government businesses.
Okay.
Right? Moved out of the corporate assessment market, not really focused on the corporate assessment markets like any other morphing.
Okay.
Education and government assessments is probably large for Meritrack. You know, I act only as a passive supporter rather than any active role.
Casual offline.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts?
Madhav, we were just discussing this before you went out, so just want to continue the train of thought and maybe you can share this with the larger audience also. So you talked about collaboration and partnerships, and we have seen with some of our companies where we have pointed in that direction, got some results. How ambitious should a startup be when looking for collaborations? For example, if I am a startup and if I want to, I mean, I've got reactions where I said, why don't you go and collaborate with an SAP or go to collaborate with an Oracle? I've seen the entrepreneur literally being taken aback. Hey, I mean, me going talk to SAP and Oracle, I mean, I cannot even imagine. So can you just, I mean, in your views, is there a right time to go and speak to these behemoths, or like go for it the day one you think you're ready? What is your take? Or is there the right timing to the whole thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as entrepreneurs, you should be as ambitious as you can to say that, listen, I'm going to make SAP chase me, just to take that example. But it cannot be on without any foundation, right? Which means if you have done your homework very, very clearly as to saying, what is the gap in the portfolio? Why will I be relevant to them? And why do I think that I'll be able to add value to them? If that answer to that question is correct, right, then in fact, I'm sure Pawan will share that experience, you know, when Pawan started talking to Tata ClassEdge, right? I think when the initial conversation started, there was a bit of a hesitation to say, hey, do we have something of value to offer to our Tata ClassEdge? And you have a lot of things, right? What if they listen to us and they say, hey, this is useless, and they start building on their own as a partner? Many questions that come into mind. But the moment you do your homework and go clear that this is my value proposition, this is what is missing in your portfolio, and this is what we can collaborate, here is what I can offer, here is what you can take, and you structure a partnership and not a vendor equivalent, but it's a true partnership, magic can happen. And I think in 3 months' time, we stitched together a deal, I think, which was announced last week, right? And the deal size itself was like 4 times of revenue of Lab and App till that time, right? So I think it comes back to the fundamental question that it's not just about it's not about a customer, it's about the collaborator as well. What is the problem I'm trying to solve, and what is my solution, and how does it fit into your solution stack? And it should happen. So be audacious, but be audacious with a lot of groundwork and preparation, because in cases like this, you get one shot. You lose that shot, it's very difficult to claw your way back in. Okay, how many of you are looking to raise funding? Don't say this is a trick question. 3, 1 hand. Only one. I thought I'll see more hands, yeah? I thought I'll see all hands up. No? Huh? As a person, I can no, I'm both my hands up. How many of you are not looking to raise funding? Let me ask the other question. You should put your hands up to say how many of you are looking to do funding. Your hand will go up there, yeah? Yes, sir.
Go out and find a problem to solve. I mean, from your perspective as an...
How do you find a problem to solve? The only way that you find problems to solve is by spending time with customers, is by spending time on the field, right? And the only way that you will understand what problem to solve is only that. So my only answer to that is that problems cannot be found and solved by sitting in closed rooms thinking about something. And I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who say, I've thought about this problem. I said, okay, so where did the thought come from? If the thought does not come from the customer, go validate it. So my only point is, the more time we spend with users, with the entire ecosystem, the clearer the problem definition that comes out to be, right? So the simple answer is just go on the field and meet people, right? With not an agenda in mind, with not a pitch to be made, but to genuinely understand what's happening. And the second thing is, I think the ecosystem also means coming to forums like this. I mean, one of the things we realized in Start.edu was that the learning that our entrepreneurs who participated in Start.edu workshops got from just talking to other entrepreneurs was far higher than what we could ever give to them, right? So talking to people and continuously reiterating. So, you know, in the other avatar that I do of the rural startup that I'm doing, one of the things I say is, listen, one day in a week, I have to be out there in some village, some taluk, just sitting and talking to people. Right? Not trying to go with my sales team or whatever distribution team trying to sell something, just soak it in. Because the perspectives are very different. And you realize that, you know, just as an example, we were asked to sell solar lamps a year ago. And so we went in with teams of people into darker villages saying, here are solar lamps. And the feedback that we got from the customers there was, why are you coming to sell me a lamp? Give me something to light up my TV. Right? I don't need light. First I need to watch my serials. Right? So why are you not bringing something that will power up a TV and then you plug something that will show me a light, right? So we think that they need light. They think, boss, I need entertainment. That's more important to me than light, as an example. So I think the consumer insight that comes along with conversations is super critical. And, you know, in any conversation that we have, as I said, the question that we start off with is, what is your consumer insight and where have you got that from? And that is the basis for your problem definition. Right? I think that's the critical part. Yes, please.
So, you're right, I can go look at a problem and look at a solution, but in my mind, that gives you incremental growth or incremental changes. If you want to go out and change the world, then you need to go and imagine what can be, and that is a inspirational piece of going and painting a picture to say that there is an issue, but I can go and paint a picture of what can be, right? So I would temper what he says with, I know he can disagree, we can have a separate chat, but essentially that I think is a fundamental difference of what can be. You have to imagine what can be.
Yeah, I completely agree, Ravi. The only point is you move into the realm of the solutioning, right? I mean, example, it was argued that, you brought up the name of Steve Jobs, and apparently every research by every other fellow proved that there's no market for an iPad. That they said between an iPod and the PC, that there's no need for another device, a phone and a thing, right? Now, one argument has been that Steve Jobs disregarded every other market research and went with his gut feel. So as entrepreneurs, we should go with our gut feel. But in another interview, I think Steve Jobs has said that, listen, I didn't need market research because I was so close to the customer. I was so close to the customer that none of the other MR guys got it, but I knew intuitively what is the positioning in the minds of people that I need to create, right? So once you do that, then the imagining comes into play. But you can't do that without very, very closely understanding your customers.
Yeah, the psyche.
Yeah.
And the example in my mind is more than that of Apple is of a Tesla.
Yeah.
Position it as just another electric car. The Nissan Leaf, if you've seen a picture of the Nissan Leaf, was out 2.5 years before the Tesla came out. But the Nissan Leaf was a dodgy looking piece that was there. Reva was out in the market much before Tesla, right? What he did was position and saying that this is a desire that I'm going to create. And if you look at the first two releases, the first release was it was the sexiest car on the streets of America. And not cheap. 100K for a car when a Nissan Leaf was selling for 20K.
So I think there were two interestingly related pieces that I wanted to ask about that have come up. One bit is the inspiration piece and trying to paint the desire for the user. The other bit was what you had alluded to earlier with Meritrack, where you first informed the CEOs that they're losing X number of rupees for every bad hire, creating the urgency for the solution that you were offering. Could you speak to how, as entrepreneurs, we think about creating that urgency or that inspiration, finding it in our users, and being able to project that in a way that ultimately serves our goals?
Thanks. Let me attempt that, but your question triggered another point that I think is pertinent to make here, is that at the DNA, you need to decide whether you are a B2B company or a B2C company, right? Because the DNA of a B2B company is very different from that of a B2C entity, and it's hard to change midway. It's the same analogy of why a product company mindset is very different from a services company mindset, and which is why rarely have you seen great products come out of services entities, right? And there's no right or wrong. It's your choice of who's your customer, right? The moment you decide who your customer is and what is the model to sell, you are almost setting the DNA of your organization to sell in that model. Just stepping back, and I'll come in a slightly circuitous way to answer your question, is that I believe that education per se is fundamentally a B2C business, right? Unless and until you're selling a school administration system, eventually it has to finally be a brand that is built. And unfortunately, at least till date, we have not seen, barring one or two, and Byju's is trying to do that, we have not seen brands being built or new brands. Just think of the last time that you heard a brand being built, or you can visualize a brand in the education space, right? And there's been nothing. I mean, NIIT did that several years ago, right? You think of IT education, you said NIIT, right? In the consumer's mind, very few education brands have been built. And I think that is critical. So where I come back to your point, Adam, is that there is the utility and there is the aspirational side of things. Okay. the inspirational product, etc., you're speaking the language of the B2C, the consumer, what inspires them, what moves them finally, right? I'm not saying that does not exist on the B2B side. Meritrack was purely a B2B business. We had to speak the language of numbers. We had to tell the CEO that by not doing this, you're losing money or you're leaving revenue on the table, right? So the approaches that you would take depending on what sort of construct that you're going after will vary. And you got to do a mixture of both to kind of get that big and urgent. Finally, to any customer, whether it's an individual or to the company, it has to be big and urgent, right? For example, one of the companies that we are incubating, working with is a career counseling entity called Lodestar. We've done 1,000 parents. One of the biggest things we've realized is the call to action for the parent does not exist. Well, every parent that you spoke to said, I know that career planning is one of the biggest things that we have to do for our kids. It's so critical, urgent. You call them to come on a Saturday for a presentation. 100 say yes, 7 show up. What happened to the remaining 93? You got all sorts of excuses. Oh, somebody came home. I got a call from my office, 11 o'clock. And we are saying, if you're saying it's so important for your kid, can't you block a Saturday morning to spend an hour? It's not happening. Right? So we are struggling saying, how do you make it urgent in their minds? People realize it's big, but it's not urgent. Right? And we are wasting a lot of money by trying to attract 100 and convert 3. Unit economics doesn't make any sense at all. Right? So we are figuring out ways of building that category, so on and so forth. It's called Lodestar. 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 LODE. Lodestar. Launched in Bangalore at this point of time. And it's solving the problem. In fact, of the 1,000 parents who paid to come, we've got a 96% satisfaction rate. 96% of the parents and the kids have come back and said, this service just blew our mind away. So one of the arguments, so we hired a marketing consultant to kind of come look at this. He's saying, you know what, this will take time. This will take you 4 years. Don't expect overnight results. Right? You will struggle. Now, do you have the wherewithal to struggle for 4 years? That's your call. Because we are trying to build a category. And that's a call we have to take. Investors are saying, oh, but you can't be 100,000 entity people in next 2 years. And maybe we are answering, maybe not. It's going to take more time. But is it a problem worth solving? Yes. Have we solved it well? Yes. Is it big? Yes. It's urgent? Not yet. We have to make it urgent.
Madan, good morning. I'm Prakash from ThoughtWorks. You shared actually good insights. Thank you. I have a question actually. Actually, I liked what you said about collaborative effort versus individualized silos, which probably doesn't necessarily work for the betterment of education and overall industry, probably, right? So my question is actually around there are bits and pieces of efforts happening. Like for example, in fact, yesterday we were discussing about the whole Macaulaysism, actually, the Macaulay education system that was brought by British, how it potentially destroyed the way we kind of, learn things and so on. And there is, of course, the Manish Jain trying to change certain things, the way we teach things to kids or adults and so on. And there is that bits of higher education system which is probably not necessarily good. Which is very teacher oriented. If your teacher is good, student is going to come good. If teacher is again needs their own training, probably the output is not good and so on. Combined with the age we are living in, where of course the Coursera's and Khan Academies and all of this happening, right? So do you see is there any collaborative effort which is already happening with all those thought leaders like Manish Jains and you and people, everyone, right? Everyone who wants to do something good for the industry, is there any effort happening in terms of changing the way we do things? Of course, maybe it may be moving away from the whole Macaulay education system, mark-based systems and so on. B, combined with the power of technology. So it's not necessarily tied to each teachers like subjective teaching and so on, right? Do you see any efforts happening in that, collaborative efforts happening in that direction?
Sure. So there are lots of collaborative efforts, and just to kind of detail that further, see, we're seeing collaboration happen on multiple levels. One is at a policy level, right? What should be the policy of education? There's been a lot of talk and discussion around the new education policy that is coming out, as an example. I think there's a lot of work happening by bringing in a variety of people together to be these advocates of change at a policy level. That's happening. Is there collaboration happening at a technology level? Little, right? How do you get, just as a different example, if you take a Microsoft, a Cisco, Google, or an Adobe, all of them are saying, all of us are trying to do a variety of things in education. Everybody says education is the single biggest, one of the largest sectors that we want to go after. But I'm not seeing any active collaboration that is happening between these larger technology players to create common set of protocols, to create common platforms, so on and so forth. Right? And I think there's a lot to be done. Do I see collaboration happening at the ground level with entrepreneurs? And just a simple example is that most of us in the K-12 space go to schools to sell. Right? How many of us have carried another guy's product, which is in a complementary space, which is in a supplementary space to say, hey, listen, I'm going in, I can sell yours as well. Right? And the customers are getting inundated with it. Of all the places, I went to a school in Gadag, which is in North Karnataka, affordable private school. The guy says, in the last 1 year, I've got 17 proposals from various guys. Math, I'll teach you science, I'll teach you English, I'll do arts, I'll do learning through sports, all sorts of stuff. He opened his bureau and showed me 17 proposals. He says 17 different guys have come to a school in Gadag, which is not even like on the radar. And he says, I said, how many have you chosen? He says, I've chosen 0. Because he says, I have no clue what to choose. If I choose one, the other 16 will be behind my back saying that, why did you give the business to him? You give me this. He says, my management asked me, which one should I choose? I have no answer. I have no clue what to do. Right? Which is better? So I am not doing anything. Now imagine a collaborative effort, even by 5 entrepreneurs to say, let us sit with you, Mr. Principal and the trustees, and let's talk about what are the types of solutions out there. What should be your evaluation criteria when you're evaluating? Right? Are there groups of entrepreneurs doing such kind of collaborative work to build the market? I don't see that happening. Can that be done? It can be done now. Right? And I think that is the need of the hour. In technology companies to work towards a common vision. Right? And so that's an early stage of an effort that we are starting off at Silvit.
So I'll ask the last question with the mic in my hand, obviously. Sure. So with your vast experience in the education space, right? From the, I think you've worked with a lot of startups from K-12 to higher education and then vocational as well. And also with across the spectrum, with rural, the startup that you're working there. So what are the problems, deeper problems that you have observed, but entrepreneurs just seem to miss that just because they didn't deep down, right? So can you share some of them? That will be really insightful.
Actually, yeah, that could take a long time, but I'll keep my answer simple. I think the problem largely to that answer to the question is in our heads, right? We put our blinkers on and we are blindsided. We don't open it up, right? And I think the biggest problem is that as entrepreneurs, we go looking for a problem from the lens that we see the problem with and not hear what the customer is saying. So the customer says something, we hear something else because we are tuned to hear that answer because that serves our purpose. So many times, even when I've said, go talk to the customers, find out what they want, I ask the customer this, he said this, but I think it means this. It doesn't serve any purpose. So the only thing that I use as a common thing as an answer, and it's we can go much deeper than that, but I'm saying, please listen to the signals coming out. What the customer says is not necessarily what he wants. What he does not say that he doesn't want is not necessarily what he doesn't want. Right? I know my Hindi is atrocious, but I remember a super dialogue from a Bachchan movie which says, "Jo hai, wo nahi hai. Jo nahi hai, wo ho bhi sakta hai." Right? Now, how do you decipher that? And that is an art that all entrepreneurs must master. To say, how do you listen to the unsaid? Right? And how do you interpret what they're saying clearly in your mind without any filters? I think that's a critical skill which helps you to get to understand what problem to really solve. Right? So with that, thank you so much. I'm around for the next few hours. Love to chat up more. Thank you.